On a Christmas Eve marked by grief and silence, a father returns home believing nothing would change, but as he crosses the door, he hears his daughter's laughter, a sound long forgotten, coming from the back of the house. There, he finds the child playing with the new nanny, who in just a few days achieved what he couldn't in years. What seemed like an ordinary night becomes the beginning of deep redemption and an inevitable confrontation. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. Night was falling over New York City with that typical December rush when the sun bids an early farewell and the city lights begin to compete with the orange twilight that still insists on coloring the horizon. Richard Miller parked the car in the building's garage where he lived in the Upper West Side neighborhood and turned off the engine with a long, tired sigh. His hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion of the business trip that consumed him. It was something deeper, older, something he had carried on his shoulders since that day in March, a year and a half ago, when everything changed. Laura. His wife's name still ached like an open wound, one of those that never fully heal. Richard closed his eyes and allowed her memory to invade his mind for an instant. Her smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was focused, the scent of lavender she always left in the air when she passed by. All of this was still alive within him, pulsating like a phantom heart that refused to stop beating. But the pain was too great, and Richard had found a way to escape it. Work, endless meetings, trips to Washington, D.C., Miami, Chicago, contracts, proposals, spreadsheets, presentations, anything that would keep him away from that house, away from the memories, away from the unbearable reality that Laura would not return, and also away from Sophia. Sophia, his daughter. 5 years old, with huge brown eyes like her mother's, dark hair always tied in a messy ponytail. Sophia, who had been born with autism, and who, from a very young age, needed special care, structured routines, infinite patience. Laura always knew how to deal with her. Laura understood every gesture, every sound, every silence of her daughter. But Richard had never learned. He loved Sophia, loved her deeply, but felt lost in front of her. And when Laura left, that feeling of helplessness turned into fear, and fear into flight. He picked up his suitcase from the back seat and walked to the elevator. It was almost 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve. The streets were full of people rushing after last-minute gifts, last-minute purchases for Christmas dinner. But Richard hadn't bought anything. He hadn't planned anything. Christmas for him was just another day that needed to pass, another date that brought too many painful memories. The elevator ascended slowly to the 7th floor. Richard observed his reflection in the foggy mirror. 38 years old, but he looked 10 years older. Deep, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, a crumpled suit. A man who had given up on himself without realizing it. When the door opened, he walked down the silent corridor to the apartment door. He put the key in the lock, expecting to find what he always found: silence, emptiness. Sophia would probably already be asleep or quiet in her room, and the nanny sitting in the living room on her phone, waiting for her shift to end. But upon opening the door, something different happened. A laugh. Richard froze with his hand still on the doorknob. It was Sophia's laugh, clear, spontaneous, crystalline, like the sound of bells in the wind. He hadn't heard that sound in so long that, for a moment, he thought he was imagining it. But no. The laughter continued, followed by clapping and an enthusiastic female voice. "Come on. Sophia, you can do it. That's right, my love. Look how well you're doing." Richard dropped his suitcase on the floor and walked slowly through the living room towards the sound. His steps were silent on the beige carpet. He passed the bookshelf full of books no one touched anymore, the dining table where no one had sat together for months, and stopped at the entrance to the playroom. What he saw left him breathless. Sophia was sitting on the floor, surrounded by colorful building blocks. Her eyes shone with concentration as she fitted one piece into another, creating a crooked but full of life tower. And beside her, sitting on the floor with her legs crossed, was the nanny, Julia. She had been hired only 3 weeks ago, after the previous nanny resigned, claiming she couldn't handle the child. Julia was young, probably about 25. Straight brown hair to her shoulders, a delicate face, green eyes that conveyed a calm Richard had never seen in anyone. She was dressed simply, jeans and a white blouse, and smiled at Sophia with a genuine sweetness, without rush, without frustration, without that tiredness that all the other nannies showed after a few days. "Very good, Sophia. Now let's put this blue piece on top here. You can try. Don't be afraid to make a mistake." Sophia picked up the blue piece with both hands, slowly brought it closer to the tower, and carefully fitted it. The tower wobbled, but didn't fall, and Sophia laughed again, clapping her small hands. "I did it." Sophia's voice was low, almost a whisper. But it was there. She was speaking, communicating. Richard felt his legs give way. He leaned against the doorframe, unable to enter, unable to announce his presence. He just wanted to stay there, watching, trying to understand what was happening, because that girl there, smiling, interacting, building, was not the same child he had left 3 weeks ago. Or maybe she was. Perhaps Sophia had always been like this, and he had simply never known how to reach her. Julia noticed the movement at the door and turned her head. Her eyes met Richard's. She didn't seem startled, just gave a small smile and made a discreet gesture with her head, as if to say, "It's okay." Richard nodded back, still paralyzed. Julia returned her attention to Sophia. "You know what I think. Sophia, I think you're an amazing architect. This tower is beautiful. How about we take a picture for you to show Daddy when he gets here?" "Daddy." The word came out of Sophia's mouth like a question. She looked around, searching, and then her eyes found Richard at the door. For a second he feared she would be scared, that she would retreat, that she would return to silence. But Sophia just tilted her head to the side, as she did when she was curious. "Hi, honey." Richard's voice came out hoarse, choked. He entered the room slowly, as if any sudden movement could break that fragile and precious moment. Sophia looked at Julia, as if asking for permission for something. Julia smiled. "You can go, my love. It's Daddy." And then, to Richard's complete astonishment, Sophia stood up and walked to him. She didn't run. She didn't jump into his arms like children do in movies. But she walked, slowly, with her careful little steps, and stopped in front of him. Richard knelt on the floor to be at her height. "Hi, Sophia." "Hi." She extended her small hand and touched his face, her cold fingers against his unshaven beard. Richard felt his eyes sting. When was the last time she had touched him? When was the last time he had truly seen her, not as a burden or a responsibility, but as his daughter? "You built a very beautiful tower." "Tower?" Sophia repeated the word and smiled. Then she turned and went back to Julia, sitting down beside her again. Richard stayed there, kneeling, feeling something break inside his chest. It wasn't pain. It was shame. A deep, burning, unbearable shame. Julia gently stood up and approached him. Her green eyes met his with a comprehension that Richard didn't deserve. "Mr. Miller, welcome back. Sophia had a wonderful day today. She built this tower, painted a picture, and even helped organize the toys. We're working with a new routine, with adapted sensory and pedagogical activities. She's responding very well." I heard her laughter. Julia smiled. "She laughs a lot now, especially when we play with Play-Doh, or when I sing to her." "How did you do it?" The question came out before Richard could think. Julia hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I didn't do anything, Mr. Miller. Sophia has always been capable. She just needed someone who knew how to wait, who respected her pace, who showed her that the world isn't a scary place. Children like Sophia need predictability, constant affection, patience, and I have a lot of love to give." Richard lowered his eyes. Patience, constant affection. Everything he hadn't managed to offer his own daughter. "I need to talk to you after Sophia falls asleep." "Of course, no problem." Julia went back to the floor and continued playing with Sophia as if nothing had happened. Richard left the room, picked up his suitcase and went to the bedroom. He closed the door, sat. on the edge of the bed, and buried his face in his hands. Tears came without warning, silent and warm, wetting his fingers. He cried for the wife he had lost, for the daughter he had emotionally abandoned, for the father he had never managed to be. He cried for the loneliness, for the emptiness, for the guilt that consumed him every day. He couldn't say how long he stayed there. But when he stood up, it was already dark night. He took a shower, changed his clothes, and returned to the living room. Julia was in the kitchen preparing Sophia's dinner. The girl was sitting at the table, swinging her little legs and looking at a picture book. She always has dinner at 7 o'clock. Then she takes a bath, brushes her teeth and goes to bed at 8 o'clock. Routine helps a lot. Richard observed the scene. Everything seemed so organized, so peaceful. Julia served Sophia's plate carefully, cutting the pieces small, placing them in the right order, because he knew Sophia didn't like it when foods mixed. How did Julia know this? How did she know so many things that he, her father, had never known? "Do you want to have dinner too, Mr. Miller?" "No, thank you. I'll eat something later." Julia nodded and returned her attention to Sophia. She talked to her the whole time, explaining everything, asking if it was tasty, praising her when she ate properly. Sophia responded little, but she responded, and that was already a miracle. After dinner, Julia took Sophia for a bath. Richard stayed in the living room, listening to the sounds of the water, Julia's soft voice quietly singing a lullaby, and Sophia's occasional giggles. When Julia brought the girl back already in her pajamas and with wet hair, Sophia looked sleepy and happy. "Shall we say good night to Daddy?" Sophia walked to Richard and, to his surprise, climbed onto his lap. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. Richard hugged her carefully, as if hugging something very fragile and precious. "Good night, Sophia." "Night, Daddy." Julia took Sophia to her room. Richard heard the sound of the story being read, Julia's soft voice filling the silence. When she returned, almost half an hour later, Sophia was already asleep. "Does she sleep through the night?" "Yes, ever since we started the new routine. She feels safe, so she sleeps peacefully." Richard gestured for Julia to sit down. She settled on the sofa, maintaining a professional yet relaxed posture. He didn't know where to begin. "Julia, I need to thank you. I don't know what you did, but Sophia is different. Better. Much better. I just gave her what she needed, Mr. Miller. Attention, structure, affection. Sophia is an incredible girl. She just needed someone who believed in that." "Why couldn't the other nannies do it?" Julia sighed. "Because they didn't understand. Children with autism aren't difficult, they're different. And different isn't bad. Sophia doesn't need to be fixed. She needs to be understood. I studied a lot about this, took courses, specialized. Working with special needs children has always been my dream." Richard looked at her with a mixture of admiration and shame. "I never knew how to deal with her. Not since she was born. Laura was always better at it. And when Laura left, I just ran away. I buried everything in work and left Sophia alone. I'm a terrible father." "Don't say that." Julia's voice was firm but gentle. "You're suffering, you're grieving, and that's human. But Sophia is still here and she needs you. It's not too late." "How do I do it? How do I reconnect with her?" "Start slowly, spend more time at home, participate in her routines, play with her, listen to her, even when she doesn't speak with words. Children with autism communicate in many ways. Sophia is very expressive, you just need to learn her language." Richard nodded, absorbing every word. For the first time in a long time, he felt something that wasn't despair. It was hope. Small, fragile, but real. "I'll try. I promise I'll try." Julia smiled. "That's all Sophia needs." She stood up, picked up her bag, and prepared to leave. But before opening the door, she turned to Richard. "Mr. Miller, tomorrow is Christmas. I don't know if you have plans, but I was thinking of making a simple Christmas dinner here for Sophia. Nothing too elaborate, but something she'd like. Children need rituals, good memories. If you allow it, of course." Richard felt his throat tighten. "You can do it. And please, call me Richard. No, Mr." Julia nodded and left. Richard was left alone in the silent living room. He walked to Sophia's room and half opened the door. The girl slept, peacefully, hugging a teddy bear that Laura had given her when she was born. Richard entered the room, knelt beside the bed, and observed his daughter's face. She was so small, so fragile, and he had abandoned her when she needed him most. "I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm sorry for everything. I promise I'll be better. I promise I'll be here." He carefully kissed her forehead and left the room. But upon returning to the living room, he felt something change in the air. The apartment door opened and a familiar figure entered without knocking. Beatrice, Laura's sister, Sophia's aunt. Beatrice was 35, 2 years younger than Laura would be now. She was beautiful, but her face carried a hardness that Laura had never had. Short blonde hair, always impeccable clothes, an erect and authoritative posture. Since Laura's passing, Beatrice had taken on the role of guardian of her sister's memory, appearing at the house almost every day, reorganizing everything, criticizing everything, controlling everything. "Richard, you're back." Her voice carried no joy. It was just an observation. "Hi, Beatrice. Yes, I arrived this afternoon." She looked around, her eyes scanning every corner. "Has the new nanny left yet?" "Yes. Julia just left." "Julia." Beatrice repeated the name with disdain. "That name doesn't suit this house. Laura always wanted a more experienced, older nanny, someone trustworthy." "Julia is trustworthy, and Sophia is doing very well with her." Beatrice crossed her arms. "I need to talk to you about this, Richard. This girl is 25 years old. What does she know about caring for a special needs child? Sophia needs someone serious, not a young woman who plays on the floor." "Sophia is happy, Beatrice. She's laughing, talking, interacting. Julia is doing an amazing job. Or she's making you believe that." Richard felt irritation rise. "What do you mean by that?" "I'm just saying you need to be careful. You're a widowed, successful, vulnerable man. These young women know how to take advantage. Julia isn't like that. She genuinely cares about Sophia." Beatrice gave a cold smile. "You barely know this woman, Richard. I've known Sophia since she was born. I've been here every day since Laura left. I'm the only family this child has besides you. And I won't allow a stranger to come here and take my sister's place." "No one is taking anyone's place, Beatrice. Julia is the nanny. She takes care of Sophia. It's her job." Beatrice approached, her eyes fixed on his. "Tomorrow is Christmas Eve. I'm going to prepare dinner here as Laura would. I'll use her recipes, set the table as she set it. Sophia needs to remember her mother." Richard took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "Julia has already offered to make a simple dinner for Sophia." "Then cancel it. This house is as much mine as it is yours. Laura was my sister, and I won't let you erase her memory by bringing strangers to take her place." Beatrice left before Richard could respond, slamming the door shut. He stood there still, feeling the weight of Beatrice's emotional manipulation. She always used Laura as a weapon, as an excuse, as a justification to control everything. And Richard, consumed by guilt, had never known how to oppose her. But now something was different. He had seen Sophia happy. He had seen his daughter alive again. And he wasn't going to let Beatrice destroy that. No matter how much it hurt, no matter how much she tried to manipulate him, he needed to protect Sophia. And if that meant facing Beatrice, then he would face her. Night fell heavily over New York City. Richard went to bed but couldn't sleep. His mind was full of thoughts, memories, fears, and a fragile determination that tried to solidify within him. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve, and he knew it would be a night that would change everything. Christmas Eve morning dawned with a grey sky over New York City, that kind of day where the sun stubbornly hides behind heavy clouds that don't quite manage to release rain. Richard woke up early, even before his alarm clock rang. He had slept poorly, waking several times. During the night, his restless mind wandering through labyrinths of memories and worries. The conversation with Beatrice still echoed in his thoughts, but something bigger bothered him. The painful realization that he had been an absent father, that Sophia had grown up without him, and that a stranger had achieved in 3 weeks what he hadn't managed in 5 years. He got up, put on a sweatshirt, and walked to the kitchen. He made coffee, sat at the table, and stayed there, observing the silent apartment around him. Everything was too tidy, too clean, too impersonal. That place no longer felt like a home. It felt like a mausoleum dedicated to Laura, where every object was frozen in time, every piece of furniture positioned exactly as she had left it, every framed photo like an altar of memories no one dared to move. At 7:30 in the morning, the doorbell rang. It was Julia. Richard opened the door and she entered with a calm smile, carrying a canvas bag full of materials. "Good morning, Richard. I brought some things for today's activities. We're going to make Christmas cookies with Sophia. She loves working with dough and textures." "Good morning. Come." And Sophia is still sleeping. "That's fine. I'll prepare her breakfast in the meantime." Julia went to the kitchen and began to work with a quiet efficiency. Richard watched her from afar, noting every careful gesture, every thoughtful movement. She cut fruits into small pieces, prepared a smoothie, separated the small bread Sophia liked, warmed the milk to the exact temperature. How did she know all this? How many hours had she spent observing, learning, dedicating herself to knowing every detail of Sophia's routine? "Richard, do you want to have coffee with us? I think it would be good for Sophia." He hesitated. The idea of sitting at the table, of participating in that morning routine seemed strange, but he had promised to try. "I do." Julia smiled and placed another plate on the table. A few minutes later, Sophia appeared at the bedroom door, still in her pajamas, her hair messy, rubbing her eyes with her small hands. Upon seeing Julia, her face lit up. Juju. It was the nickname Sophia had given her. Julia opened her arms, and Sophia ran into them, hugging the nanny with an intensity that made Richard's chest tighten. When was the last time Sophia had hugged him like that? When was the last time he had been present enough to deserve such a hug? "Good morning, my love. Did you sleep well?" Sophia nodded and then noticed Richard sitting at the table. She stopped, observing him as if trying to understand what he was doing there. Richard smiled, trying to appear natural. "Good morning, Sophia. I came to have coffee with you." Sophia looked at Julia, seeking confirmation. Julia nodded, encouraging. Slowly, Sophia walked to the chair next to Julia and climbed onto it. It wasn't next to Richard, but he understood. It was a process. Sophia needed time to trust him again, if she had ever trusted him at all. Breakfast was peaceful. Julia talked to Sophia the whole time, explaining everything, asking simple questions, praising every small achievement. Sophia ate properly, drank all her smoothie, and even used the napkin to wipe her mouth by herself. Richard watched everything in silence, impressed by how much his daughter had evolved. "Today we're going to make Christmas cookies, remember? You're going to help me mix everything." "Cookie," Sophia repeated the word and clapped her hands. Julia looked at Richard. "Do you want to participate?" It was the second chance she offered. Richard wasn't going to waste it. "I'd love to." After breakfast, Julia helped Sophia get dressed and brush her teeth. Then, she set up the cooking station at the kitchen table. She put aprons on Sophia and herself, spread out the ingredients, and began to teach. Richard stood there, observing, not quite knowing what to do. "Richard, can you separate the cookie cutters? They're in that drawer there." He obeyed, happy to have something concrete to do. He picked up the star, Christmas tree, and heart-shaped cutters. Julia began to mix the ingredients with Sophia, letting the girl add the flour, break the eggs with help, stir the dough with her small hands. There was flour everywhere, on the table, on the floor, on Sophia's face. But no one cared. Sophia laughed, got messy, had fun. "Now let's roll out the dough and use the cutters. Richard, can you help Sophia?" He approached, knelt beside his daughter. Sophia looked at him, hesitant. Richard picked up a star-shaped cutter and showed it to her. "Shall we make a star?" Sophia took the cutter from his hand and pressed it into the dough. The cookie was crooked, imperfect, but it was hers. She had made it. And when she looked at Richard, there was a sparkle in her eyes that he hadn't seen in a long time. Approval, pride, connection. "It's beautiful, Sophia." She smiled, a small, shy, but real smile. And in that moment Richard felt something heal within him. It was just a crooked cookie, but it meant so much more. It meant that maybe there was still time. Maybe he could still be the father Sophia deserved. They spent the whole morning making cookies. When they finally put the trays in, the oven, the kitchen was a mess, but there was laughter. There was life. There was something Richard hadn't felt in a long time. Happiness. Simple, pure, unexpected. Julia cleaned Sophia up and took the girl to the living room to play while the cookies baked. Richard stayed in the kitchen, cleaning up the mess, smelling the sweet scent that was beginning to spread through the apartment. When he finished, he went to the living room and found Julia and Sophia putting together a puzzle on the floor. He sat on the sofa, just watching, and then Julia did something. That surprised him. "Sophia, why don't you ask Daddy to play with us?" Sophia looked at Richard, evaluating. Then she extended her small hand, holding a puzzle piece. "Daddy, here." Richard got off the sofa and sat on the floor beside them. Sophia placed the piece in his hand and pointed to an empty space in the puzzle. He fitted the piece, and Sophia clapped her hands. It was a small gesture, but for Richard it was everything. For the first time, he was part of his daughter's life, not as a distant shadow, but as a real presence. They spent the whole afternoon together. They played, laughed, built block castles, drew pictures. Julia led everything with impressive naturalness, always including Richard, always giving space for him and Sophia to connect. She wasn't trying to take his place. She was helping to build a bridge between father and daughter, and Richard was deeply grateful for that. When the clock struck 5 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Richard answered and found Beatrice at the door, carrying bags full of groceries. She entered without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the room. "What's that smell?" "We made Christmas cookies." Sophia helped. Beatrice frowned. "Sophia doesn't know how to make cookies." "She does now. Julia taught her." Beatrice's eyes turned to Julia, who was in the living room with Sophia. There was something cold, calculating in that look. Julia noticed and stood up, maintaining her professional composure. "Good afternoon." Beatrice didn't answer. She just turned to Richard. "I came to bring things for tomorrow's dinner. I'm going to prepare everything as Laura did. Turkey, stuffing, rice, desserts. Everything the way she liked it. Beatrice, I said yesterday that Julia had already offered to make a simple dinner. And I said I would come. Anyway, this house is mine too. Laura was my sister. I have the right to be here for Christmas." Richard sighed. He didn't want to fight, not on that day. So he opened the door and let her in. Beatrice looked around, her eyes stopping at the crooked Christmas tree full of poorly placed ornaments. Her mouth twisted into an expression of disapproval. "What is that?" "A Christmas tree. Sophia helped decorate it." Laura would never leave a tree like that. She always made sure everything was perfect. Laura isn't here and Sophia is, and she's happy with the tree, the way it is. Beatrice didn't respond. She just walked to the kitchen where Julia was preparing the ingredients for dinner. The two stared at each other for a long moment, the tension in the air so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. "I came to help with dinner." Julia kept her voice calm, professional. "Thank you, but everything is under control." "I didn't ask if it was under control. I said I came to help." Beatrice began to take out pots, open cabinets, move around the kitchen as if she owned the place. Julia watched in silence without interfering, but Richard could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the dish towel. Sophia appeared at the kitchen door, still holding one of the sensory blocks. Upon seeing Beatrice, her face closed. She recoiled, hiding behind Julia. Beatrice noticed, and something in her expression changed. Hurt, jealousy, anger. "Sophia, come give Auntie a hug." Sophia squeezed Julia's leg harder without moving. Beatrice took a step towards them. "Sophia, I'm talking to you. Come here." Her voice was firm, authoritative. Sophia began to tremble. Julia knelt down, putting herself at the girl's height. "It's okay, my love. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. Don't interfere. I'm her aunt. I have more right over this child than you. No one has rights over anyone. Sophia is a person, and she has the right to choose who she wants to be with. Beatrice clenched her fists, her face red with suppressed anger. Richard felt he needed to intervene before the situation exploded. "Beatrice, please, don't do this. Not today." "Do what, Richard? Demand respect? This girl is being taught to despise me, and it's all her fault." Beatrice pointed at Julia with an accusing finger. Julia didn't move, maintaining her calm posture, but Richard could see the pain in her eyes, the injustice of those accusations. "Julia isn't teaching anything. Sophia is reacting to your behavior, Beatrice. Children feel energy, and your energy is heavy, aggressive. Sophia is afraid of you." "Afraid? Afraid of me? I'm the only person who cares about this child besides you. I've been here every day since Laura left. I'm the one who took care of everything when you ran off on your business trips. And now this stranger comes and wants to take my place?" Julia finally spoke, her voice still calm but filled with firmness. "I don't want to take anyone's place, Mrs. Beatrice, but you need to understand that love is not possession. Sophia is not an object. She is a child who needs affection, not control. You know nothing about me or what I feel. You didn't lose a sister. You don't know what it's like to see the person you love most leave and leave an impossible void to fill. I know what loss is, and I know that pain doesn't justify hurting a child." The words dropped like a bomb. Beatrice's eyes widened, her face turning even redder. For a moment, Richard thought she would lunge at Julia, but then Beatrice turned and left the kitchen, stomping her feet forcefully. The following hours were tense. Beatrice stayed in the living room, reorganizing everything, moving ornaments on the tree, adjusting sofa cushions, creating an atmosphere of constant discomfort. Julia continued in the kitchen, preparing dinner with Sophia by her side, keeping the girl busy and happy. Richard moved between the two rooms, trying to maintain peace, but feeling it was an impossible mission. When the clock struck 6 o'clock, Julia announced that dinner was ready. The table was set simply but beautifully. Colorful plates, folded napkins, a centerpiece with candles. Nothing elaborate, nothing ostentatious, just welcoming. Beatrice looked at the table and scoffed. "Laura always insisted on using the special china for Christmas." "This china is special. It's the one Sophia chose." Beatrice didn't answer. She just sat at the head of the table, occupying Laura's usual place. Richard noticed the symbolism, but decided not to comment. He didn't want any more fights. Julia helped Sophia sit down and then served the plates. Roasted chicken, rice, salad, potatoes. All simple, all delicious, all made with love. Sophia ate slowly, exploring each flavor. She was happy, calm, but Beatrice watched the girl's every move with critical eyes, judging, evaluating, waiting for a mistake, and the mistake came. Sophia, trying to pick up a piece of potato, dropped her fork. The sound of metal hitting the plate echoed through the room like a gunshot. "Sophia, be careful. You need to behave like a polite girl." Beatrice's voice was harsh, full of disapproval. Sophia froze, her eyes widening with fear. Richard was about to intervene, but Julia was faster. "It's okay, Sophia. It was an accident. It happens to everyone. It's not okay. She needs to learn to behave. Laura always taught that at the table you need to have manners. Sophia is 5 years old, and she has autism. She's doing the best she can." "Autism is no excuse for bad manners." "It's not an excuse, it's a condition, and Sophia deserves patience, not judgment." Beatrice threw her napkin on the table and stood up, her chair scraping the floor with a screech. Sophia began to cry, her small hands covering her ears, trying to block out the noise, the tension, the fear. Julia immediately went to her, picked her up, calming her with soft words. "It's okay, my love, it's okay. Juju is here." Richard also stood up, facing Beatrice. "Enough, Beatrice. You scared Sophia. Again." "I scared her? I'm just trying to educate this child. But it seems no one in this house cares about education. We care about Sophia's well-being, and you're destroying it." "I'm destroying it. Me? Who ran away for a year and a half? Who abandoned this child when she needed him most? I was here, Richard. I took care of everything, and now you have the audacity to accuse me." "You didn't take care of anything. You used Sophia as an emotional substitute for Laura. You're suffocating this child with your impossible expectations, with your need for control, with your inability to deal with your own pain. The words came out harsh, precise. Beatrice staggered as if she had been slapped. Her hands trembled, her eyes gleamed with unshed tears. And then something broke inside her. All the anger, all the pain, all the accumulated frustration exploded at once. You have no right to judge me. You don't know what it's like to see your sister leave. You don't know what it's like to lose the only person who truly understood you. Laura was everything to me. And when she left, Sophia was all I had left. But now you're trying to take her from me too. You're trying to erase Laura. Replace her with this intruder. She pointed at Julia, her finger trembling with rage. Julia still held Sophia, protecting the girl with her body, but her eyes were fixed on Beatrice, firm and fearless. I'm not replacing anyone. I'm taking care of a child who needs love and stability. And you, Mrs. Beatrice, are preventing that. You're nothing but an opportunist, a schemer who saw a vulnerable widowed man and a needy child and decided to enter their lives to get what she wants. And what do I want according to you? Beatrice gave a cruel smile. Financial security, a home, a man who can support you. It's always the same story. Julia could have defended herself, could have yelled back. But she did none of that. She just looked at Beatrice with a deep sadness in her eyes. You don't know me. You know nothing about me, about my life, about my intentions. But I will tell you one thing. I love Sophia, truly love her. And if you truly loved this child, you would want her to be happy. But you don't want that. You want to control, to possess, to use Sophia to fill the void Laura left. And that's not love, that's selfishness. The words fell like stones, heavy and definitive. Beatrice stood there, trembling with anger, pain, humiliation. And then something inside her completely broke. She picked up the wineglass from the table and threw it against the wall. The glass shattered, shards scattering across the floor, the red liquid running down the white wall like blood. Sophia let out a scream, terrified. Julia protected her, turning her back to Beatrice, forming a shield with her own body. Richard stepped forward, placing himself between Beatrice and the two. "Get out of my way." Beatrice's voice was low, dangerous. Her eyes were fixed on Sophia, who was crying desperately in Julia's arms. "No, you're not getting near them. That's my niece. I have a right." You lost that right the moment you started using Sophia as an emotional weapon. The moment you decided your needs were more important than her well-being. Beatrice tried to get past him, but Richard held her arm. Not forcefully, but firmly. Beatrice tried to pull away, but he didn't allow it. "Let go of me. Not until you calm down." "I don't need to calm down. I need to get my niece and take her out of this house before you completely destroy her." She tried to break free again, and this time she succeeded. She lunged towards Julia, her hands outstretched like claws, trying to snatch Sophia from the nanny's arms. Julia's protective instinct acted immediately. She moved away, holding Beatrice's wrist with one hand while keeping Sophia safe with the other. Her eyes, always so calm, now shone with fierce determination. "You will not touch this child with anger. Get your hands off me. Only when you calm down." Richard stepped forward, separating the two. Beatrice was out of control, her eyes full of tears, her body trembling. She looked at him, at Julia, at Sophia, and then something within her collapsed. She fell to her knees on the floor, sobbing, her hands covering her face. "Laura, my sister, I miss her so much, I don't know how to live without her." And for the first time, Richard saw Beatrice not as the antagonist, but as what she truly was, a woman broken by pain, lost in her own sadness, unable to find a path that didn't involve controlling others. He knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I know, Beatrice, I miss her too, but Sophia isn't Laura, and you can't use this child to fill the void your sister left. That's not fair to Sophia, and it's not fair to you." Beatrice looked at him, her eyes red, her face wet with tears. I wanted everything to go back to how it was. It won't, never will. And the faster we accept that, the faster we can start building something new. Beatrice looked at Sophia, still in Julia's arms, still crying softly. For a moment, something changed in her gaze. Guilt, shame, regret. I scared her, didn't I? Yes. Beatrice slowly stood up, wiping her face with trembling hands. She looked at Julia. I'm sorry. The word came out low, almost inaudible. Julia nodded, saying nothing. Beatrice picked up her bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. I'm going to seek help. You're right, I need help. And then she left, closing the door softly behind her. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't heavy. It was reflective. Richard looked at Julia, who still held Sophia, calming the girl with soft words and kisses on her forehead. It's okay now, my love. It's over. Daddy is here. Juju is here. No one will hurt you. Sophia finally calmed down, her sobs diminishing until they were just occasional sniffles. She looked at Richard, her eyes red and swollen, and extended her little arms to him. Richard picked her up, hugging her tightly, feeling her small body tremble against his. Tears came without warning, silent, wetting his shoulder. Richard stroked her hair, whispering words of comfort he didn't even know he knew. Julia discreetly moved away, giving space for father and daughter to have that moment. When Sophia finally calmed down, Richard placed her on the sofa and turned to Julia. I'm sorry about that. Beatrice has been very complicated since Laura left. I understand. Grief is difficult, but she needs professional help. Her behavior is not healthy, neither for her nor for Sophia. I know, I just didn't know how to deal with it. I felt too guilty to confront her. Guilt is a paralyzing weight, Richard, but you can't let it destroy what's being built here. Sophia is finally starting to blossom. Don't let anyone stifle that. Richard nodded, absorbing the words. Julia was right. He had spent so much time drowning in guilt that he hadn't realized how much it was allowing other people to control his life and Sophia's life. Tomorrow we'll have a simple dinner, just the three of us, nothing elaborate, just something tasty that Sophia can enjoy. Julia smiled. I think that's perfect. That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Richard and Julia stayed in the living room talking. It had become a habit. They talked about Sophia's day, about her progress, about difficulties, about plans for the next day. But that night, the conversation took a different turn. Julia, I need to tell you something. She looked at him attentive. I was lost. Completely lost. When Laura left, I no longer knew who I was, what I was, where I was going. And Sophia reminded me so much of her that it hurt to look at my own daughter. I know that's horrible. I know I should have been stronger, but I couldn't. So I ran away. I buried everything in work and left Sophia alone when she needed me most. And when you arrived and I saw what you managed to do in just 3 weeks, I felt shame. Because you, a person who barely knew Sophia, achieved what I, her father, never did. But now I understand. It wasn't about achieving or not achieving. It was about being present. It was about trying. And you showed me that. You taught me how to be a father to my own daughter, and I will never be able to thank you enough for that. Julia wiped a tear that ran down her face. You don't need to thank me, Richard. I did what anyone who loves children would do. Sophia is special. She deserves all the love in the world. And you're giving that to her now. That's what matters, not the past, the present, the now. Richard nodded, absorbing the words, and then he realized something he had been feeling for days, but was afraid to acknowledge. He looked at Julia not just as Sophia's nanny, he looked at her as someone who had become essential in his life, someone whose presence brought peace, whose voice brought comfort, whose smile brought hope. But he was afraid of ruining everything, afraid that she would think he was taking advantage, as Beatrice had insinuated, afraid that she didn't feel the same. So he just said, "Thank you," and changed the subject, talking about plans for the next day. But Julia watched him with those deep green eyes, as if she knew exactly what he wasn't saying, and she smiled. A small smile, but one that carried a silent promise that maybe, just maybe, she felt something too. 2 weeks after Christmas, Beatrice returned. She called beforehand asking permission to visit. Her voice was different, softer, more humble. Richard hesitated, but then agreed. When she arrived, she was visibly different. Her hair was less rigid, her clothes more casual, her face without that tense expression she always carried. She entered slowly, as if stepping on fragile ground. "Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me." "Hi, Beatrice. Come in." She looked around, noticing the changes. There were toys scattered around the living room, Sophia's drawings taped to the refrigerator, an atmosphere of life that hadn't existed before. And then she saw Sophia playing on the floor with Julia, building a block castle. Sophia looked at her, hesitant. Beatrice didn't approach. She just knelt on the floor, at the girl's height, and smiled gently. "Hi, Sophia. Can I play with you?" Sophia looked at Julia, seeking approval. Julia nodded, encouraging. Sophia then picked up a block and extended it to Beatrice. It was a small gesture, but it meant she was willing to try. Beatrice took the block, her eyes shining with suppressed tears. "Thank you, Sophia. I'll put it here, okay?" Sophia nodded and went back to playing. Beatrice stayed there, participating in silence, respecting the girl's space without forcing, without demanding, without controlling. Richard watched from the doorway, surprised by the change. After an hour, Sophia got tired and went to her room with Julia. Beatrice stayed in the living room with Richard. "I started therapy. Twice a week. I'm working on my grief, my need for control, everything. My therapist made me see a lot of things I didn't want to see. I was using Sophia as an emotional substitute for Laura. I was projecting all my expectations onto her. And I was hurting everyone in the process, especially myself. I know it wasn't easy to recognize that. It wasn't, but it was necessary. I almost destroyed everything, Richard. Almost lost you, lost Sophia, lost myself. That Christmas night showed me that I was at rock bottom, and that if I didn't do something, I would end up alone and bitter for the rest of my life." Richard nodded, feeling an empathy he didn't expect to feel. "I'm also doing therapy. Started last week. I'm working on my grief, my guilt, my relationship with Sophia. It's difficult, but it's helping." Beatrice smiled, a genuine smile. "Laura would be proud of you, of us, for trying to be better." Richard felt his throat tighten at the mention of Laura's name. But it was no longer that acute, unbearable pain. It was a gentle, melancholic longing, but one that no longer paralyzed him. She would be, and she would be happy to see Sophia doing so well. Beatrice nodded. "Julia is amazing. I was wrong about her, completely wrong. She truly loves Sophia. Anyone can see that." "She loves her, and Sophia loves her." Beatrice looked at him, evaluating. "And you?" The question caught him by surprise. Richard looked away, feeling his face flush. "I don't know what you're asking." "Yes, you do. You feel something for her, don't you?" Richard hesitated. It was the first time someone had put into words what he had been feeling. And somehow hearing it from Beatrice, of all people, made it all more real. "I do. But I'm afraid. Afraid of ruining everything. Afraid that she doesn't feel the same. Afraid that it's too soon, that Laura would think I'm replacing her." Beatrice approached and placed a hand on his arm. "Laura loved you, Richard, and she would want you to be happy. She wouldn't want you to be stuck in the past, suffering alone. If you feel something for Julia, if she makes you happy, if she makes Sophia happy, then you should try. Life is too short to waste opportunities to be happy." Richard looked at her, surprised by the wisdom of those words. Beatrice, who was once the antagonist, was now an ally, someone who, despite all her mistakes, was trying to be better. "Thank you, Beatrice, for everything, for trying, for being honest." She smiled. "We all deserve a second chance." Beatrice began to visit regularly, always respecting boundaries, always asking permission, always participating in a healthy way. Slowly, her relationship with Sophia was rebuilt. It was no longer that suffocating and possessive relationship. It was something lighter, more genuine. Beatrice learned to be an aunt, not a substitute mother, and that made all the difference. Months passed. February arrived with its scorching heat, then March with its torrential rains. Richard had returned to work, but now with a completely different routine. He left earlier, arrived earlier, worked from home whenever possible. His priorities had changed. Sophia was no longer that heavy. Responsibility he carried with guilt. She was his daughter, his little girl. And he wanted to be present for every moment, every achievement, every challenge. Sophia blossomed. She began attending a special school that Julia had recommended. She made friends. She learned new things every day. Her communication improved exponentially. She still had her difficulties, her limitations, but now she had a solid support network. She had her father present. She had Julia. She had an improved version of Aunt Beatrice. She had qualified teachers. She had love. And love works miracles. One April afternoon, Richard arrived home and found Julia in the kitchen preparing dinner. Sophia was at school, participating in an extracurricular activity. It was rare for them to be alone. Richard entered the kitchen, watching Julia cut vegetables with precise and delicate movements. She was beautiful. She always had been, but now he allowed himself to see it, allowed himself to feel it. "Need help?" She looked at him and smiled. "Always. Can you peel these potatoes?" They worked side by side in comfortable silence, but Richard felt he needed to say something, needed to be honest, because keeping everything inside was becoming unbearable. "Julia, I need to tell you something." She stopped cutting and looked at him attentive. "In the last few months you've changed my life, not just as Sophia's nanny, but as a person. You taught me how to be a father. You taught me patience. You taught me that there is still love in the world. And I started to feel something for you, something that goes beyond gratitude, something that scares me and excites me at the same time. And I don't know if it's too soon, if it's wrong, if you feel the same. But I needed to say it. Because keeping this inside is killing me." Julia stared at him for a long moment, her green eyes shining with an emotion Richard couldn't decipher. And then she smiled, a beautiful, genuine smile, full of tenderness. "I feel it too, Richard, from the beginning. But I was afraid you'd think I was taking advantage, as Beatrice said. I was afraid of ruining everything, of losing Sophia, of losing you. So I kept it in. But yes, I feel it. I love Sophia, and I love you." The words fell like balm on an open wound. Richard dropped the knife he was holding and approached her. He touched her face with his hands, feeling her soft, warm skin, and then he kissed her, slowly, carefully, as if kissing something precious and fragile. Julia responded, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body relaxing against his. When they separated, they were smiling. There were tears in both their eyes, but they were tears of happiness, of relief, of something new beginning. "I don't want to rush anything. I want to do things right. For you, for Sophia, for us." Julia nodded, her fingers intertwined with his. "We have time, all the time, in the world." And they did. From that day on, their relationship developed naturally. There was no rush, there was no pressure. Just two adults who had found love amidst pain, who had built something beautiful amidst the rubble. Sophia noticed the change, and instead of being confused or scared, she was happy, because the girl knew, with that innate wisdom that only children have, that love does not divide. Love multiplies. A year after that turbulent Christmas night, the family was reunited again. But now it was different. Richard was in the kitchen with Julia, preparing dinner together, laughing, talking, working in perfect harmony. Sophia was in the living room decorating the tree with Beatrice, who was now a constant and healthy presence in the girl's life. The house was full of laughter, life, light. When everyone sat down at the table for dinner, Richard looked around and felt his chest warm. There was his family. It wasn't the family he had imagined having. Laura wasn't physically there, but her presence was felt in every one of Sophia's laughs, in every good memory they carried, in every lesson she had left behind. And he knew Laura would be happy. Happy that he had found love again. Happy that Sophia was blossoming. Happy that everyone was trying to be better. Julia was by his side now, no longer as a nanny, but as a companion, as a partner, as an essential part of that rebuilt family. They hadn't married yet, they weren't officially living together yet, but the plans existed. Plans for a shared future, for a life built together, for a love that had risen from the ashes of pain and transformed into something beautiful and strong. Beatrice raised her glass of juice, her eyes shining. "I want to make a toast. To the past year, to everything we've learned, to all the pains we've faced and overcome, and especially to this wonderful family we've managed to build together. Laura would be proud of all of us." Everyone raised their glasses, including Sophia, who held a small glass of soda. Richard looked at each of them, feeling his eyes sting with emotion. To family, to overcoming, to love. To family, they all repeated in unison. Sophia drank her soda and then looked at Richard with those huge brown eyes that so reminded him of Laura. "Daddy happy?" Richard knelt, beside her chair, holding her small hands. "Daddy is very happy, my love. Very happy indeed. And you?" Sophia smiled, that beautiful smile that was now so common. Sophia happy too. And it was true. Everyone there was happy. It wasn't a perfect happiness, without pains or challenges. But it was a real happiness built with effort, with patience, with love. It was the happiness of those who had passed through the dark valley and found the light on the other side. The happiness of those who had allowed themselves to heal, allowed themselves to start over, allowed themselves to love again. The night continued with laughter, stories, shared memories. Sophia got tired first and went to sleep. Richard put her to bed, read her a story, kissed her forehead, and stayed there for a few minutes, just watching his daughter sleep. She was bigger now, her hair longer, her face more mature, but she was still his little girl, and he was there, present, participating. Father. When he returned to the living room, he found Julia and Beatrice talking on the sofa, animated. The two had become unlikely friends, united by the love they felt for Sophia and by the journey of healing they shared. Richard joined them, sitting beside Julia, who immediately intertwined her fingers with his. Beatrice smiled at the gesture. "You two are beautiful together. Laura would be happy." And for the first time, hearing Laura's name didn't hurt. It was just a gentle memory, full of love and gratitude for the time they had together, but without that acute pain that used to paralyze him. "Thank you, Beatrice, for everything, for striving to change, for being the wonderful Aunt Sophia needs." Beatrice wiped a tear that ran down her face. "I'm the one who thanks you for not giving up on me, for giving me a second chance. I didn't deserve it, but you gave it to me anyway, and that changed my life. We all deserve second chances, and thirds, and as many as necessary. The important thing is to try, not to give up, to keep going." They stayed there talking late, sharing dreams, plans, hopes, and when Beatrice finally said goodbye and left, Richard and Julia were left alone in the living room, embracing on the sofa, watching the Christmas tree lights twinkle softly. "Can you believe it's been a year since that night?" Julia sighed, snuggling closer to him. "It feels like a lifetime ago. So much has changed." "Everything has changed, for the better." She looked at him, her green eyes shining with love. "For much better." Richard kissed her, feeling gratitude flood his chest. Gratitude for life, for second chances, for the love he had found when he least expected it. He had lost Laura, and that pain would never completely disappear. But he had found Julia, and he had rediscovered Sophia, and he had rediscovered himself. The journey had not been easy. There had been pain, conflict, tears, despair, but there had also been healing, forgiveness, growth, love, and in the end it had been worth it. Every tear, every difficulty, every moment of despair had been worth it, because all of it had brought them to that point, to that moment of peace, of love, of genuine happiness. And as the Christmas lights twinkled softly and the city of New York City slept outside, Richard knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be, in the right place, at the right time, with the right people, his family, imperfect, rebuilt but true, and that was all that mattered. The pain still existed, but it no longer governed. Love, in its multiple forms, had found space to grow. And that Christmas night, which a year ago had almost destroyed the family, had ultimately proven to be the turning point that saved them all. The moment when the truth came to light, fear was exposed, and love was finally allowed to act. And so, amidst tears and smiles, amidst goodbyes and new beginnings, amidst healed pains and renewed hopes, that family found its way. A path illuminated not by the absence of difficulties, but by the constant presence of love, patience, and the determination to keep going, always keep going, no matter how difficult the path. Because in the end, that's what made a family. Not blood, not perfection, not the absence of conflict, but the daily choice to be present, to love, to try to be better, and they had made that choice every day, and they would continue to make it. Forever. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Richard, Sophia, and Julia has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming, of pain transformed into healing, of love reborn when all seemed lost, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what stood out most to you in this story. Was it Richard's transformation as a father, Julia's dedication, Beatrice's healing, or Sophia's blossoming? Every day we bring intense stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul, showing that it is always possible to start over, that love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. We await you in the next episode with another story that will touch your soul and make you believe that, no matter how dark the night, there is always a dawn waiting.